Hey there, Tyler here. I wanted to go over a couple cognitive science techniques that I think are monumental when it comes to learning. Some different things that you might do intuitively or might be totally brand new. Either way, I wanted to quickly go over some of them with you before you start your studying journey with me. One, the Pomodoro technique. Really interesting. The Pomodoro technique basically means 25 minutes of focused, 5 minutes of rest. Right? 25 minutes of focused, 5 minutes of rest. Once you've done that a few times, take a longer break, right? Maybe every hour, take a 10-minute, every 2 hours, take a 20-minute break, something like that. Slowly kind of expand that. So the Pomodoro technique, staying focused, right? The other technique that's important to talk about, or concept, not really a technique, but a concept, is flow or mindfulness. When you get in a rhythm of something and things are going smoothly, right? You're in the flow of whatever it is. That's part of that Pomodoro technique. For those 25 minutes, when you're in flow, when you are focused on whatever it is that you're studying, put away all the distractions, right? This is the important of monotasking versus multitasking. Turn off the notifications off your phone. Close the door, close the blinds, whatever you need so that you're not distracted by your friends, your family, your coworkers, your pets, your neighbors, your relatives, what have you. Focus on whatever it is that you're focusing on. Then if you need to take a break, take a break. Right? Go catch up on those emails. Have designated time to do those things. But when you're focused, stay focused. The other method that's really important is a thing called active recall or total recall or the retrieval method. A few different names depending on where you're sourcing this. And what this is doing is testing yourself, kind of like the flashcard idea. Right? Don't just simply reread your notes and be like, oh, this is when this happened. This is what this means. Ask yourself, when did that happen? Come up with an answer. What does this mean? Answer it. And this is part of what I do during my tutoring sessions. When you're talking to me, I'm going to be asking those open-ended questions without giving you a multiple choice and seeing if that stuff stuck. I'm going to tell you something and then immediately ask you to repeat it back to me. So again, making sure that it's sticking, that retrieval method. It's really important to be able to pull that information from what you've previously learned. One way to think about it, and it's kind of like building neural pathways in your brain. Well, it literally is building neural pathways in your brain. But if you think of it like path in a field of grass, right? You've planted a tree and you want to be able to find that tree again. What's the best way to be able to find it? Well, walk there and back a few times, right? So the grass keeps getting pushed down. You go there once, you've left some footsteps. You go there a few times, you've left a path. It's going to be a lot easier to go back and find that. Just like with the brain, the more often you're like, oh, his name's Tyler, his name's Tyler, his name's Tyler, it's going to be a lot easier to remember than my name's Tyler, right? Because that repetition. The other one is spaced repetition, right? Yes, it's important to ask yourself and be able to pull that forward, but also being able to space it out. It's not just in that 25 minutes that's focused, that important, but that 5-minute space of space, that white space. If you think of photographs, it's important. It helps you focus on what's relevant, what's important. And so when you're talking about spaced repetition, find things that are challenging, focus on that, study that. Great. In a few days, circle back, right? We're going to go through all the 4 modules within the LLQP course. We're going to go through it, and we're also going to circle back and say, hey, what do we remember from last time? What do we remember from the time before that? What do we remember from the time before that, before that? Being able to keep bringing those forward is going to make it easier, again, to find that tree in the middle of a field of grass. The more times you go there, the better. But that space between also helps as well. It allows it to settle. You're not cramming, right? Talking about cramming, talking about that high stress, also not good. Make sure that you're drinking enough water, you're eating healthy, and that you're getting a good 7 to 9 hours of sleep at night. All of this is important, as well as keeping your stress levels down. When you have high stress, it's not ideal for remembering, certainly for long-term things, right? There's good stress and there's bad stress, and how are you framing it? Are you excited or are you nervous? Finding that right word is really important. The other thing that I think is kind of cool, not sure if it's as relevant with this, I don't embrace this technique as much for what I teach, but certainly a cool one worth talking about, and it's called the memory palace. Memory palace, you can create a place in your mind, you're going to visualize it, and spend time just meditating and picture this place. Maybe it's where you live, maybe it's where you once lived, maybe it's where you want to live, maybe it's completely fictional and it's like the Fortress of Solitude for Superman. I don't know, and I don't care. Wherever you want to have this memory palace. Then You can start putting things there. Our minds are very visual. We already know that you can break down learners into the audible, the visual, the kinesthetic, but our brains operate visually, right? They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and it's true. So when you can create an item that literally visualizes and is the metaphor of a concept that you're trying to learn, place it in your memory palace so that when you see it, you're like, oh yeah, that's how I drive a car. That's how I operate a stick shift. That's how I write HTML, whatever it is. Have those little visuals to remind you of the lessons that you're learning. The other thing that's really important is curiosity. And that's why I always ask my students when you're coming to class is come with questions, because an answer to a question that you have is way more valuable than random information that I'm going to throw at you. Here's an example. Maybe you see me at a cocktail party and you're wondering, hey, who is that guy? I wonder what his name is. And then throughout the conversation, you hear someone say, his name is Tyler. You're more likely to remember that than if I come up to you and just randomly, without your consent, say, hey, my name is Tyler, blah, 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 blah. You're like, okay, didn't know I cared, I don't. It's not going to stick anywhere because you don't have that emotional connection to whatever it is. Think of the moments in your life that were most memorable. Odds are there was an emotional attachment to them, right? When you think of the people that are most memorable in your life, the events that are most memorable in your life, guess what? There's emotions attached. So be curious, because curiosity is going to help create that home for that memory to stick, right? Figure out what it is they don't know. The other strategy that I really like, and I haven't found it in a lot of cognitive science books that I've read, but I call it failing forward. And I like this idea, and it's part of the unlearning process, because we learn how to learn, that's great, and then we need to learn how to unlearn. How do you undo those things that are stuck into your head, right? After school, you no longer have to raise your hand to ask to go to the bathroom. If you work at a place where your employer asks you to raise your hand to go to the bathroom, you might want to find a different place to work. But we had to unlearn that, right? You can tell the kids, like, excuse me, may I go to the bathroom? We don't live there anymore. We've unlearned that strategy. And there's a lot of other things that we need to unlearn. For example, that failing is bad. Look at all the great entrepreneurs. They all have great stories out there of how many times they failed until they didn't, right? They didn't fail making the light bulb X amount of times. It was that many steps in order to get there, okay? So when you're doing these exams, is reading the textbook the best strategy? For some, I would say less than 1%. I am not someone who enjoys reading a textbook. It's not how I retain the information. So I like jumping in and writing the exams and failing. How did I fail? I have curiosity now. Ooh, I got question 1 wrong. Why? Why did I get it wrong? Okay, B is the right answer. Why is B the right answer? Be curious. Maybe there's an explanation. I don't understand that explanation. Okay, where in that reference in the textbook is it talking about? Okay, go to that part in the textbook. Read that portion of it. Does that make sense? Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. If it doesn't make sense, great. Bring that to our session. Bring that to class and say, hey, Tyler, I don't understand this. I got a question about it. It explained it this way. I went to the textbook. I read this. I read that little example that's in the textbook explaining this concept, and it's just not sticking. What's wrong, right? Why isn't this working? And odds are I've come across this issue. Odds are you're not the first person to bring this concept to me, and I can find a way to help explain it in a way that sticks. I have a lot of metaphors, a lot of stories and anecdotes and things like that to help things connect and how to stick. So this video is not about the content specific, but rather how to learn. So those are some big ones that I wanted to talk about. Visualizing, really important. Anytime I can find a way that you can picture that concept is going to be really, really important. Anyways, hopefully some of these tips and tricks have helped stick in your brain. One thing that I do remember, and I just wanted to finish with this note that I learned from Bob Watt, the guy who taught me how to teach life insurance, is that there's only 2 reasons a student gets a question wrong. 1, they don't understand the concept, right, that's being asked, right, the content, and 2, they don't understand the question, right? And that's another thing that we're going to go over, is not just simply how to read the textbook and how to learn the information, but also how to read the questions and figure what's exactly that's being asked. And again, trial and error is a great part of this. The more time you spend in the arena, the better boxer you're going to be. The more time you spend on the ice, the better hockey player you're going to be. So get in that exam, get those questions wrong, get back up, brush yourself off, and do it again, and do it again, and do it again until you don't fail, right? Hopefully all this helped, and I look forward to talking with you soon. Thank you.